Welcome to another episode of the Cynical podcast. It's been a year since we did the last one, but I'm here with another very special person, a friend, a mentor, Chad George.
What's going on?
So for those of you that don't know, Chad's actually a pretty accomplished artist. He used to run a studio. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how did you get into art?
So I've actually been an artist my whole life. When I was a kid, I started drawing from as early as I could remember. And when I left Sacramento, it was actually to pursue art and film. And so I moved from Rancho Cordova, which is a small city in Sacramento, to LA. And I went to the Art Institute of California, and I studied animation and graphic design. I ended up doing that for a long time professionally, and ended up opening up a small little studio with a friend, and it grew a couple times. And then we opened up a kind of a more full-fledged studio where we were hiring other artists and actually instructors from my school to work on projects that we had, and it was a lot of fun.
And art's still a pretty big thing right now, right? Because with the designs that you do for the gym and your designs for other things. So like, how did you find that bringing that part of your life into what you're doing right now? How was it an easy transition, or how did you come to do that?
Well, I think art has just always been a part of me. And so when I left the art industry to pursue martial arts, it was really an easy thing to connect with because I still saw it all as art. The only thing that changed was the canvas, so I'm no longer drawing, but now I'm out there actually doing it. What's cool about being able to design my own apparel and design anything I need for the academy is that I don't have to hire somebody. I can always bring somebody on board and tell them exactly what I'm looking for and realistically how to do it, because if I wanted to, I could sit down and actually just design the stuff myself. So it's great that I can have that liberty to be able to do it on my own, or just help coach somebody along the path. And
how did you get into fighting? Because initially your career was in art. How was it that you just went from one thing to another? Like, how did that happen?
So my story with pursuing art was always a dream of mine. That was something I'd always wanted to do. This was it. I wanted to become an artist. I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to work for the big studios. And I got to this stage where art just wasn't a passion of mine anymore. It was like I felt that I was just spinning the wheels, that I was doing it just to do it because this is what I said I wanted to do, and I needed something else. So I wrestled growing up, and I also boxed a little growing up. And I said, you know what? I want to just get in shape. I want to get back in shape. I want to do something to get me active. I had started doing a lot of bad habits where I was smoking a lot of cigarettes. I was doing all kinds of other stuff that isn't healthy for the body. And so I just wanted to start getting in shape. And when I did that, and I started looking for wrestling schools, because when I started fighting, this was in the early stages of the sport where you couldn't just go down any street and find a school to train at. And so I was looking for a wrestling school, and couldn't find them. There was no wrestling schools anywhere. And a buddy I had worked on a project with said, hey, why don't you try out this jiu-jitsu school that I train at? And I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that jiu-jitsu stuff. I've seen it, what it looks like. It doesn't look too fun. He goes, well, just give it a try. And I said, all right, whatever. So I went with him to his academy that he trained at, and I was like, holy shit, this is pretty dope. I get to wrestle, and I get to choke people. Like, that's phenomenal. And so I was having a blast doing that. So I said, okay, let me check this out for a little bit. And so I started training, nothing crazy. Just I started training maybe once or twice a week, just like the average person. And I was still very, very active with my art. And the craziest thing happened was the guy that I had been training with said, hey, why don't you try our MMA classes at night? You might like that too. And I was like, well, sure, I like this other thing. Why don't I give it a try? And I went into their MMA classes, and again, my head was like, oh my God, this is so dope. I get to punch people, I get to choke people, and I get to wrestle. This is really cool. And so I started getting this bug of wanting to train. And I didn't have any passion for fighting. I mean, the guys that I trained with, they were like encyclopedias of some of the fighters that were doing their thing at that time. And I remember one of the guys used to just read off all these names and their stats and what they've done. I'm like, how the hell do you know all this? This is crazy. I've never even heard of any of these guys you're talking about, and you're reading it off of like you have a book with you. And I trained with that group for about 2 months. And then the same coach that told me to try the MMA class threw the craziest thing on my table. He said, listen, I don't want to push you in anything, but what would you think about doing a fight? And me being a broke college student at this time, I mean, we've all done stupid ass shit for money, I'm sure. I was intrigued, and I said, well, what do you mean a fight? And he goes, yeah, well, there's a fight coming up. They need somebody that doesn't have too much experience and pays money. Would you be interested? And I started thinking, I'm like, this is interesting. Maybe. I mean, I'd never even sparred before. This is something that, like, I'd done some classes, and you know, I actually, to be honest, I was really intimidated about fighting. I mean, I had been bullied my whole life, and every time I'd seem to stand up for myself, things ended up not going my way, historically. And then it went, but everything that came after that was such a weird line of events, because the next thing he followed up with was like, yeah, well, the fight's this weekend. I'm like, what? So you want me to fight this weekend? And he goes, well, I'm just throwing it out there, but you don't know how much it pays. He goes, no. And I said, wait, is this a professional fight? And he goes, well, yeah, it pays money, so it is professional.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, it's almost comical. And I said, well, where's it at? And then he says, Tijuana, Mexico. And every part of me should have said no, but I was so enthralled by this, like, cartoon movie-esque scenario. And I just said, yeah, let's do it. And so let's say the day was Monday. We had to get to San Diego by Friday for weigh-ins, and then Saturday was the fight in Tijuana. Yeah. And I ended up getting my ass kicked for 3 rounds, pulled off a submission that I had learned within those 2 months of training, and I submitted the guy in the 3rd round. And realistically, that moment changed the course of my life, because every day I was back at the studio training, I kept thinking about, at the studio doing art, I kept thinking about training, and I wanted to get better at it. I wanted to keep doing things like that, this euphoric feeling of testing yourself. And that was when I realized that there needed to be a shift in what I was doing. And a couple years down the road, I always knew that if I needed to go back to art, I can go back to art. It's always going to be there for me.
Yeah.
But I want to give this crazy thing a try, and that was that.
So that's pretty crazy, because like that seems like one of those things that just doesn't happen. For example, like even my relationship with you, it kind of just kind of fell out of nowhere, and now here I am working with you. I don't think I never imagined I'd be so involved in what happens at CMMA so much, and now I am. Like, I just came in to learn jiu-jitsu, and that was about it. But now I'm part of the team. So you started fighting right when fighting was brand new. MMA was like looked at as human cockfighting. It wasn't. It was banned in almost every state. But you started it here in California, and at the lowest weight too, right? Correct? Was it banned?
Yeah.
Weight?
So when I started fighting, my weight class didn't exist.
Yes. Okay.
Actually, at all. There was no shows that actually hosted my weight class. And so when I fought, my first fight was at 145 pounds. We went, like I said, we went to Mexico because it was still illegal in California.
Yeah.
And when they finally brought it to the States, I was actually fighting on the very first events in California. We fought for the first state championship, which they called it a world title.
Yeah.
But because it was in California, it was the first time they had offered any of that stuff. And then my weight class was still not even one of those things that people considered that this is a valid weight. In the UFC, they only had 155 and above. Later, they eventually opened up an event with the WEC that had always considered the UFC for the smaller weights. And it was really cool that I ended up being a part of that.
And a lot of like big guys like that are kind of famous now came from that promotion, correct?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest names in the sport period for the lighter guys came from there. I mean, you've got Jose Aldo, Donald Cerrone, Uriah Faber, Dominic Cruz. I'm sure there's tons more that I can't spit off the top of my head right now. But I mean, that show defined the lower weight classes. Every single event that you would watch, it was the most exciting, packed event you'd ever seen in your life.
You know what's funny about that is that I was fairly little when the WEC came out.
Thanks for making me feel old.
But I remember watching you fight, and then when I like when I met you, I would start to think about. I'm like, oh yeah, I watched him fight. I don't remember the outcome of the fight, but I remember you because I think you had either red hair or it was blonde, and you had like a streak running through. But I remember, and I was like, oh yeah, I've seen him fight before. And then one of the main ways that I found out about you was through the EBI Combat Jiu Jitsu tournament, the first one that they had, and then when you won the Combat Jiu Jitsu Worlds. Oh, which was maybe about 2 years ago or so.
Yeah, it was 2017.
And that's what made me be like, all right, I want to do this jiu-jitsu stuff. And I never imagined I'd end up at your school. I didn't even remember what the name of your school was anymore until I ran into Mike. And then I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing, is one thing that I've realized over the course of all these years is that as soon as you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, things in your life are going to change, whether you realize it or not. And when you start doing things really for you, things that you genuinely want to do, you start seeing opportunities, you start seeing things that are available, and you really do start seeing life at a whole new angle.
Well, you're a very self-driven person. You speak a lot about your mental strength. And how you want to evoke that onto others. How did that come about?
Well, the reason why I'm so driven for this topic is because it's what plagued me for most of my life. You know, growing up, I was bullied, I was beat up. I mean, the first time I ever got into a fight to stand up for myself, I was jumped by 2 kids in school. And I realized that the biggest opponent I've ever had to face through my entire career correlated with the same opponent that I've had to face my entire life, which was myself. And when I realized that I was the reason holding myself back from anything that I had ever accomplished, not giving myself credit, not having the self-confidence to be able to do things, to always putting other people in front of me, letting people's words of what they said about me or what I'm doing have effect on me. That when I realized that I was inflicting all of this upon myself, that if I was doing it to myself, that means I could also choose to see a different angle, and I can make myself say, okay, well, if I'm telling myself I can't be good enough, why can't I tell myself I can be? And so when I realized that I can make that shift, it took me a long time. But with daily working on it and daily studying and daily trying to constantly change those habits, it finally one day clicked. I said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm no longer running. I'm not running from the idea that I can't change. And I started realizing, holy shit, I'm changing. And now that I realize that that completely was a choice, that everybody has a choice. I'm nobody special. Anything that I've ever accomplished is just because I decided to not lay down anymore. But then there's also going to be obstacles after that. And that's life. But a lot of us don't have somebody in our ear trying to push us along saying, yes, you can. You know, there's always the people that are saying, oh, well, maybe you should try, if it didn't work out for you, maybe try something else. No, fuck that. Like, if you really want to do something, you got to be all in and you got to do it. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take. And I'm just living proof of that. So if I can do it, everybody else can. And I just want to use my words that I can now, because if I don't, maybe that person will never have a chance to overcome it.
And you think being a martial artist kind of played into that, bringing up your confidence?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, even when I first started fighting, I really lacked my confidence. I mean, I was fighting against myself, trying to prove not only to myself, but other people that I wasn't a pussy. And which is the most ridiculous thing. I'm fighting against the best guys in the world. How can I consider myself a pussy? Yeah. But it's all internal, right? Like, it's the internal dialogue that we have. That's what matters. It doesn't matter how you present yourself in public. It doesn't matter how you dress. It doesn't matter what you drive. What really matters is when you lay down at night and how you talk to yourself, the thoughts that go on inside your head. And when I first started fighting, I remember I would look at martial artists and I'm like, nah, those guys are pussies. Yeah. Like those martial artists are guys that wear these white suits and they yell and scream when they throw punches in the air, but they have no idea what they're going to do. When a real fighter gets in front of me, I'll beat that guy's ass. But that was my mentality. And then one day when I started feeling those changes, I went, holy shit, I am a martial artist. Yeah. And it was my ego that was preventing me from saying that, because I thought I wanted to be a tough guy. I wanted people to see me as a tough guy. I wanted people to see me that I wasn't this pussy that was growing up that everybody used to push around. So I felt like I had to put on this image. But it was when that image decided to say, you're fronting, just be you. Yeah. I realized that I was a martial artist, and then I was able to fall in tune with that that idea that martial arts is a way of life. It's got nothing to do with tough guy, not a tough guy, how you're out there in public. No, it's a way of life. It's how you present yourself. It's how you do everything. And so martial arts truly did allow me to find myself and have such an inner peace that I would have never had without it. I mean, it's defined me.
Yeah. So you just had, well, not just, but you had your retirement fight a couple months ago. I happened to be there to shoot it, and for a upcoming documentary that's in production right now. What was that like? I remember when you told me about it the first time, which was a couple months ago, prior to the fight. It almost seemed like one of those things that you're like, I might have a fight, but it's not sure yet. Like, what was it that just put everything together, and then you were just like, I'm gonna fight, and this is gonna be my last fight? Well,
for me, I'm a fighter, right? Yeah. This is what I've done for a very long time. I mean, 15 years in a career in a sport is a long time. And when I decided I wanted to do another fight, I had to really be real with myself. Okay, what am I doing? Am I going to do one more fight and it's going to extend another streak? Am I trying to become UFC champion? Like, what is my goal? Yeah. And I think that's one obstacle I really had to overcome is defining what my goals are. And I think that's what a lot of us do, right? We had this rough idea of what our goals are, but we don't actually see it clear. Yeah. And so when I started looking at it and I had to answer it to myself, like, if I do another fight, what is it that I'm trying to do? What am I trying to achieve with this? And I realized that if I am not trying to fight the best guys in the world, if I am not trying to be in the UFC to become world champion, then I have no need to just keep doing fight by fight. I've been doing this way too long. Yeah. I have other big things that I want to work on. I want to develop the academy. I want to work with my athletes. I want to be able to be there for my wife, my child. These are things that I have to really take into account because my body has just not been good to me. Yeah. And it's been documented, right? Like, I mean, when the film Occupation Fighter came out, it was no secret that I've had extreme back problems. I ended up having back surgery. I've got, torn things throughout my entire body. And I had to be real with myself. Like, if I do another fight, what are the repercussions? It's not even the fight that I'm worried about. It's the training leading up to it. And so when we decided to do this, I had to make sure that my body was going to feel good. And it wasn't when we started, but that was also the challenge for me. I said, you know what? My body's not feeling right. I was making every excuse in my head why I shouldn't fight. And I realized that was why I needed to do it. I needed to fight one more time that way so I could prove to myself that I can overcome it still. I can overcome the idea that I don't want to do this. Yeah. But it's funny because now, before I didn't want to do it because I was facing the demons of me, whether or not I was a tough guy. Now it's just because I don't want to do it. Is it really that, or is it other underlining factors? Yeah. So I had to do a lot of self-discovery, and I think that's what amazes me about fighting is that it makes us have to face those challenges that we don't want to face. But the truth is that when that door shuts, you're going to have to face it. Yeah. So even when this fight came about, we had a lot of opponents drop out. It wasn't a smooth process. I ended up getting hurt through the training camp.
I was there.
And it's really cool because it was all documented. We have the sequel to the film coming out, and I can't wait to see it when it's when they cut it next year.
Yeah. And what was it like when you walked down that ramp with your younger students, your younger Jiu Jitsu students walking down with you? What was that like? What did you feel in that moment?
So that moment was really special for a couple reasons, and I've actually never really even described this on other shows. Is that when I first started fighting, I didn't know how to get the crowd behind me, so I put on shows. I would dye my hair. I would do these different things for the audience to be like, man, I remember that guy. Or I would literally have some kind of show walk me out. I had musicians. I had people crawling out. I had all kinds of crazy shit happen, like leading me into the ring. And throughout the rest of my career, outside of the very beginning, when California got involved, they really kind of knocked that stuff out. They were like, yeah, you're not doing that stuff. And so when I did my last fight, it was amazing because we got the thumbs up from not only the show, but the commission for me to have my younger students, the kids, come out and traditional jiu-jitsu gis. And to me, this was me handing the torch off, passing it down. And it also was a culmination of my entire career, that this is what I started doing with, and now here I am. Going into how it was walking out was breathtaking, because I've walked down that path so many times, not just for myself, but with my athletes. And I knew walking down this time was my last one for me. And when the crowd erupted when I came out, it was something truly special. I almost didn't want to go into the cage because I just wanted to take it all in. And I remember standing at the front of the cage, and I just stood there and I said, okay, man, this is what you've worked for. This is it. Embrace this moment, because this is yours. This is your moment, and let's go.
Yeah, I mean, and you could tell it was a pretty important moment, because there's like an amazing picture of you holding on to the top of the cage and just about to walk in. And that's the thing about, I guess, like photography and film, is like you could capture a moment and kind of package it and then put it out, so other people, when they look at it, they feel a semblance of what that person was going through. So that, and then just being there too, when I was there, I mean, it was pretty intense and crazy, and then people behind me were crying.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Right? Like, I think it's amazing when we do certain things and you see the impact that it has on others, you know. And when I heard that about people, you know, getting emotional, it made me emotional. Yeah. Because again, my story is no different than anybody else. It's just that I made it public and I just refused to lay down. That's all it is. Many of us have obstacles in life, and I just wanted to prove that if I can not lay down and decide to quit, anybody can do that. And to see other people grow in their life and have that kind of emotional impact, that is why I do this. Like, I'm just fighting for myself, but I'm also fighting to prove to other people that they can fight for anything as well. So that being said, I'm pretty sure you felt this, and a lot of people that are listening have felt this. There's always going to be that point where you're gonna want to just give up and throw in the towel, abandon whatever journey you're on. And you know this, I deal with that a lot. I have a lot of self-doubt in what I do. That includes the video making, photography, and how do you suggest that people kind of overcome that? It's funny, because the simple answer is truly don't give a fuck about others. Yeah. It really is. That's a simple answer, but that's not so simple. Yeah. Right? Because we care about what people say. We care about what people think. And most of the time we care more about what other people feel, say, and think than what we do about ourselves. But yet when we let ourselves overtake it, that's what makes us say, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. And we all are going to have that doubt, especially with different stages of our lives. Yep. But think about this. Think about when you were a kid. The problems and the trials and tribulations you had when you were 9 years old are way different than you have now. But could you imagine being that 9-year-old, actually taking the problems that you had when you were 9 that you can't go out and play, put that in your life now? Yeah. It'd be kind of silly if you're like, oh, the worst problems I'm having at how old are you? 24. Yeah, 24 years old, that my mom won't let me go out and play. Yeah. That would be kind of silly, right? Can we agree on that? Yes. So every stage of our lives, we're going to have these challenges that are the hardest thing we've ever had to overcome. Yeah, no shit. You're at a new stage of your life. Just like a fight. Every time you have a fight, you're going to have new challenges. And it's going to be challenges that you weren't ready for. It's going to be challenges that you had no idea how to find an answer to. But you're going to find an answer. Yeah. As long as you don't just lay down and quit. One of the greatest things I ever heard was the saying, or the term, like, you'll never fail unless you quit. You're going to lose. Think about a video game. Like, life is a video game. Yeah. Every level in a video game gets harder and harder. But if it's a game that there's lives, what happens on the more difficult of the level? You die. Yeah. You die over and over and over again. And then eventually you beat that level and you're like, yes, I finally beat that level. Yeah. Shit, the next level's even harder. Yeah. And that's what happens with life and obstacles that we have. Every time we beat something, there's going to be a more difficult obstacle in front of us. But once we understand that is how progression happens, that is what's going to work, and we become comfortable being uncomfortable, The game becomes fun. The journey becomes so much different when you look at it from that approach, because it's no longer that why is this happening to me? Instead, it's why is this happening for me?
Okay. So that's something that we talk about a lot, especially when we do our Savage Hour car rants. It's something that comes up a lot. And I think that has helped me a lot, because now I don't look at things. I just say what, like, if I was, and you know this too, like you always ask me like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, I can't, but I can try.
But that's it. Like trying is all we can do. But there's a difference between trying it with a real effort, or trying and already accepting the fact that it's not going to work. And most of us try things just until it gets too hard, and then they say, "Oh, I couldn't do it." It's like, no, you didn't even fucking try. It doesn't even really try until you get to that point where you're frustrated and it doesn't work. That's the test, right there. That's the moment of the test, because you're either going to have a breakthrough at that moment, or you can accept you didn't have the tools to make it work. But you're never going to have the tools to make it work until you actually figure out and learn the tools.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy journey. Watching you, even though it was just a small portion of that journey for you, but it's quite incredible to see that, because it inspires me, and I'm pretty sure it inspires others to want to do something better and to not quit and to continue to chase whatever, how ludicrous or dumb that dream is, but like to continue to push that forward. Because like when you told me that you had your own studio, I'm like, oh, I want to have my own studio. And I finally talked to my friend who's over there sitting in the corner, and I told him like, hey man, you want to build a studio? And he's like, sure.
You see how that works?
Yeah.
All we need to do is see that somebody else can do it.
Yeah.
And that somebody else is just a person like you, like us. And they're like, oh my God, that person's relatable. If they can do it, I can do it. That's it. But the problem is that we put these standards on people, because like you said, no matter how ludicrous or how big the dream is, that's bullshit, because that's an influence from somebody else. If you have a dream, if you really want to do something, it's not ludicrous. If you can vision it, you can do it. But you're going to have to be willing to develop the tools for it. Because if you already had the tools, you would already have it. It's that simple. But a lot of us get frustrated with the idea that, well, I can't do it already. Well, no shit. Pull your head out of your ass, and if you really want to do it, you're going to learn how to do it.
And I think a big part of that is learning how to just fail time and time again. One of my favorite lines of yours is like, you're going to have to eat plates and plates of shit. And as you're eating those plates of shit, you're going to have to learn how to enjoy them too. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, okay, so the concept of that is that you're going to have to eat a bunch of shit just so eventually you can actually get to the good stuff. That's what it means. But the problem is that if you're not willing to eat shit, you're never going to be able to get what's underneath. It's just never going to happen, because you're always trying to take the safe route. Because I promise, if you're not willing to eat shit, you're eating something that's like bland just so you don't have to eat the shit. I don't even know if that's much better, right? Like if you had a bland meal and a piece of shit in front of you, but you knew that there was something absolutely incredible that was life-changing under that piece of shit. Or you could spend the rest of your life eating that bland thing that really just makes you feel, me, through what I've been through, I'm going to take the pile of shit because I know what's underneath that.
So we touched on a little bit about your martial arts career. And I know right now, from what you've described, jiu-jitsu plays a big part of that. And how did you get into jiu-jitsu? How did that happen? Well,
jiu-jitsu was the first thing that I started with when I was looking for training.
Okay.
But because I had that connection to what jiu-jitsu was, I thought it was just martial artists, and I was like, nah, I'm not trying to be one of those guys. And it was when I lost my first professional fight. I was 3-0. And I remember I was fighting for a title, and I remember I hit this guy, boom, and he fell down, and I went crazy in my head. The crowd went crazy, and I jumped on top of him. And if I would have been smart, I probably just walked away, and the fight would have been over.
Yeah.
But instead, I jumped on top of him, emotional. He woke up, took my back, and choked me.
Oh, damn.
That was the moment that I realized that I needed jiu-jitsu. That would probably be one of those memes now. It was this moment when he realized he fucked up.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed with it. Jiu-jitsu became an obsession. And so then I started just training. And all of a sudden, the ideas of jiu-jitsu started really taking form in my mind, that jiu-jitsu, I think everybody needs. Because now I've been training jiu-jitsu for 16 years, 15 years. Got my black belt 3 years ago. And the idea of jiu-jitsu, that we train, right? And it goes in context with everything that we're talking about. We train jiu-jitsu, and we have an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you're training. You tap out in a training session. You're guaranteed. You're going to get caught with something. You're going to tap out. But look at what that does for us. I tap out in a training session. I say, okay, I give up. Let's go again. Let me try again. They tap you again. Okay, cool. I give up. Tap. Let's go again. And you really have spent this last hour and a half of your day failing, trying to succeed again, failing, trying to succeed again. And if you failed all day long today, you come back tomorrow and you're going to try to succeed again. Yeah. And those lessons, if you allow it to, really translate to life. And so jiu-jitsu became this tool for me to constantly keep failing and constantly keep learning. And when I've been able to go to world championship events and fail my way to success, it was because of jiu-jitsu that it gave me those tools.
And how do you feel that jiu-jitsu differs compared to other martial arts in the way that it physically and mentally engages a person?
Well, I think martial arts in general are fantastic for anybody. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's going to give you a peace of mind, if it's going to allow you to see yourself more than what you were, if it's going to allow you to inspire others, like, it doesn't matter. Martial arts, I think, is it's a way of being. It's a thought. It's really the way you learn how to live your life. But jiu-jitsu specifically, it's the only sport that tells you to tap out multiple times a day, which is what's going to happen to us our entire lives.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy, because I feel that impact too, and I'm barely starting off in my jiu-jitsu journey.
Well, think about it. Like, you see this all the time. Let's get this big guy that wants to start training jiu-jitsu because he's big and tough. Yeah. And then you go on a mat, you're like, I'm going to go fuck all these nerds up. Right? I see them all. I see them in there, the little pussies. And then you go with this 108-pound girl that you can't get off of you. Yeah. Ego has been checked. Right? Yeah. And now, when I talk about those moments, this is a pillar moment for that individual that we all have. You can never unlearn what just happened to you. You are, I'm going to just use an example. I'm going to say 180, 190-pound dude that just got held down by this tiny person that before that you were like, this is just retarded. Yeah. And now you cannot unlearn what just happened. You have no idea how to get out of it now. So your ego is now put into place. What do? You have two options. Option one, never go back and allow your ego to keep feeding into your own bullshit. Or you go back, you accept the fact that happened, and you allow yourself to learn. And that's where I think a lot of people grow from this stuff, because you have to get checked. And it's like it's like your favorite shirt that you wore when you were 8 years old. You're like, this is the shirt that gives you power, super strength. You know, your mom and dad convinced you that this shirt was your superpowers. Yeah. Only problem is you've been trying to wear that for the last 25 years. Yeah. It doesn't fit anymore. And at one point, that neck's going to stretch out and you cannot wear it. Yeah. That's what it's like when you acquire this new skill set, that your favorite shirt no longer fits and you have to make a decision. Do I still try to make it fit? Or do I accept that it's time to move on? Yeah. And dress like a big boy?
Well, I mean, it's incredible. Jiu-jitsu is something that's so interesting and incredible, because, like, as you're going through your training, like, things almost come together. And when you're rolling with somebody, it's, even if they're advanced, like, you know you're gonna get your ass kicked. Like that time that you fucking destroyed me at a turkey roll, like, I knew right away. Every time you grabbed my arm, I was like, oh, I'm fucked. But even though I knew I was fucked, I saw it coming, and each time I would try again, it gave me that idea, like, well, what could I do differently? And it gives you that opportunity to keep trying different things, and if they don't work, then you kind of just go home and, I guess, analyze everything that went wrong. But you also take, for me, I took something away from that too, and it was that, like, I like, for me, like, being off my back, I'm horrible at it. But when you were just going after my arms, and just you're going after my arms with your arms, and I was like, I didn't even know, like, you could do that. And now it's kind of like that seed in my head, like, well, maybe I could learn how to do that, and I could add that to what I do.
Well, look what you already did. You know, like you saw that opening a studio was something, so you did that, and now you're thinking that in your head. You're like, oh shit, maybe I can do that. So of course you can. You know, we all have this ability to do honestly whatever the fuck we want to do. The only thing that stops us is the fact that we feel like we can't.
Yeah.
That's it. It's all whether you think you can or you think you can't. You're right, and you know it's so true. You just got to be willing to say, okay, yes, I can. In pursuit of this, there's going to be a lot of tapping out. It's going to suck. I got to check my own ego, but I'm going to keep going this because I know I can make it happen.
And you think another part of it is knowing that maybe you might not be the best in the world, but you know that you're the best. You're the best in the world to yourself. And you can continue to grow.
Well, I mean, I think saying that you're the best in the world, I mean, that can almost be completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're the best version of yourself, think about this. If you've done everything you can on a daily basis and you're constantly the best version of yourself, that if you're an elite athlete or an elite entrepreneur or whatever it is, if you are an elite because of what you've built through becoming the best version of yourself, by default, you're going to be put in situations to test to see if you're the best in the world. And I mean, even for me, my goal when I started fighting was to be the best fighter in the world. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
When I finally got to a stage where I said, you know what? I'm at that level that I could be and should be fighting against the world champions to become that title holder of becoming the best in the world. By the time I finally got to that level, I didn't even want that anymore. I was like, you know what? I know it inside of my head that when it gets to competition, it's anybody's given day that day.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with me saying, oh, well, I don't want to have to prove myself that day. No, I've already proved it myself. I've done enough to where I can actually go to bed at night and I'm happy. I feel content. I've been building a legacy without even realizing that's what I was doing. And so becoming the best version of yourself is you're already winning. And if you spend every single day doing that, man, nobody can ever take that from you.
And now speaking on to the relationship that you and I have, it's very similar to the relationship that I have with Mike. How important do you think it is for people to find mentors?
I think finding mentors is absolutely everything, because we need people to push us. We need people to say, hey, I need you to get outside of your comfort zone. Because if not, you're never going to do it on your own because of that whole thing that I talked about. That we start building it in our head, oh, I can't do it. Yeah. I can't do it. But then when you see other people around you that are doing it, makes you open your eyes to the possibilities. And so if the people that you have around you are doing what most people would consider successful, then you're like, holy shit, like I'm around this every day.
Yeah.
I can do this too. You know, they say that if you want to become a millionaire, surround yourself around millionaires. You'll learn the ways of becoming a millionaire, right? So if you want to become successful, surround yourself around people that are successful, not just because you're trying to take from them, because you're trying to acquire the skills to get to wherever you want. Yeah. So mentors, whether it's in person, whether it's online or whatever it is, I think a mentor is what pushes you. I mean, I stopped listening to the music in my car a very long time ago, and all I do is listen to audiobooks. Yes. I listen to people's stories. I listen to people that have been through things. I listen to anything that I can get one little nugget to push me forward. I'm obsessed with self-development, and it wasn't because I just did it on my own. It's because I found people's stories that I could relate to, people that I could say, man, if they can do it, so can I. So going back to the question, do I think it's important? I think it's absolutely everything. And
what is it that you look in a person when you're like, all right, I'm gonna decide to take this person, like myself, like what like, I don't mean to put myself out there like that, but like, what was it that you saw in me that made you decide, I want to see what this kid can do and how I can push him forward?
Well, I truly believe that everybody opens up the opportunity for themselves. You know, there's been actually lots of people that I've talked to about doing projects with, and they've all fallen off.
Yeah,
everyone falls off as soon as things get too tiring. Everyone falls off when they realize that they want to go party. Everyone falls off when it gets a little hard. Everyone falls off as soon as there's a little bit of pushback. So realistically, I think everybody has the opportunity to open themselves up to possibilities of your own greatness, right? So when you and I started talking about projects, I was like, okay, cool. Let's see what this kid can do.
Yeah,
and you started really taking direction very well, and I was like, okay, cool, it's a good start. And then, you know, but there's also times that you and I've been like, hey, you got to get your shit together.
Yes.
But that's part of it, right? You got to have those people around you. They're going to say, hey, you're fucking up. And then what do? You have an option at that point. Do you push back and you go, oh, this guy's just a fucking asshole. What does he think he knows?
Yeah.
Or do you go, okay, maybe I was slacking off. Yeah, I was. You know, that's where changes happen, because now you can grow and now you understand that you can take direction, especially if accepting that projected you to a new level. You know, okay, so now we've got this relationship where if he tells me something to do, it's not because it's based on them being a dictator. It's truly them saying that based on leadership.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that if you want to create leaders, you have to become a leader that is focused on creating leaders. Yeah. It's not by dictatorship or power. You want people to become better versions, so therefore when you're giving them tools, it's genuine.
Yeah.
It's not just because somebody, oh, well, so-and-so says this, so I have to do it. No, that's bullshit. You have to get people to see that it's the right information, because you're leading by example. And I would like to think that that's what I do, because, you know, I try to do everything that's going to be beneficial, not just for myself, but for the people around. And I've watched your editing grow. I think I would like to say I've watched you grow in this very short amount of time. We've been doing this for only about a year now.
Yep.
And imagine, let's look at it multiplying. Imagine what you've done as an individual, growth-wise, in this last year.
Yeah.
Let's make that 10 times. Like, multiply that for your year 2 mark. Where have you grown since the beginning of that? Now let's multiply that 2 by another 5, right?
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to clearly be like, man, this is crazy growth, this potential, because the sky is the limit. And I think you're starting to see that now, because especially with everything you're talking about, all the growth that you've made, opening a studio, you got your show now, and your editing is really growing as well. You're starting to venture in new areas where instead of you saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, you're literally saying, oh, let me see if I can figure that out.
Yeah. And that could be that was one of the things that was like intensely terrifying to me. And even at the beginning when I started working with you, that was one of the things that I was like, I remember every time I would send you a video, I would like put you on do not disturb, because I didn't want to see right away. I didn't want to see what you had to say about the video right away.
Well, here's the thing about that is, and I understand, because you're an up and coming editor, and you know, I've done editing for a very long time, and I wanted to actually give you the right tools to make it look good. And it wasn't because that I was like, hey, this is how I edit, is that I saw that there was direction with what you were doing, that you actually had a good eye for it. And when I realized that you have the ability to take direction well, I was like, okay, we have something here. Because that's a hard thing to do. We get our ego involved and we say, no, that's not how I do it. It's like, well, how are you going to grow if that's not how you do it? If you stick to how you do it, then you're going to keep playing video games because it's what's most uncomfortable.
And I think that's what's like really cool, is that I've been able to learn so much in such a small amount of time. And not only just from you, like even from, you know, Carlos, who I got the opportunity to work with on this documentary. Like I learned so much in like those few months that I worked with him, and it was quite incredible. Like it's crazy to be able to like to know, all right, I'm going to start shooting now because this is interesting, and then knowing when something is not interesting at all. You know,
when I do a lot of talks about like college and education and my thoughts on it, and I truly think that if you want to get an education in anything artistic, right, like whether it's film or art or animation, that the best education you can get is hands-on. Like you can go to school and you can learn some of the tools, but if you really want to make an impact, go work for somebody for free. Go find a studio, be like, hey, can I work for you for free for 2 years? And the amount of information if they bring you on that you will learn will be way more valuable than you sitting in a classroom thinking of hypothetical ways of projects that you can build, because now you're literally working hands-on, just like what you're doing now. And look at it, in 1 year you've learned so much about editing, and you've also worked on hands-on projects that are going to go in your portfolio for the rest of your life.
It's crazy. And then it's gratifying too, like seeing people walk into the gym and be like, oh yeah, you're the dude that makes the videos. Like I came here because I saw your video on Instagram, or when, you know, things are like, hey man, like I saw what you did and it's really cool, or I appreciate how you made me look in this video. Like it helps. I don't know. It's crazy just helping people, because that's my goal with what I do with the gym, it's being able to portray the gym the way it's supposed to be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, because you're there every day and you're on the inside. You understand the culture and the community. Yeah. But if we are not directing the information out properly, then the people on the outside will never see it the way it is on the inside. You know, they just see it for the face value of somebody punching each other in the face. Yeah. You know, so that's not what we stand for. I mean, yeah, we do that, but we do it with actually a direction.
So what would you say, like, to somebody that maybe wants to get into fighting? Like, would you say, what would you tell them, like, you know, in terms, like, would it be a good option to take?
I have an interesting approach with that, because fighting to me obviously is what's allowed me to define who I am and what I've done in my entire life. But when it comes to somebody that says, this is what I want to be a fighter, I think that you need to take a deep look in yourself and figure out, what does that truly mean? Because becoming a fighter is not glamorous and glorious, what everybody thinks it is, just because you see a guy that's on TV that gets his hand raised. There's a lot of pain, a lot of upsets that are going to go along that journey. And becoming a fighter isn't just, you know, because you want to tell yourself or tell people that you're a fighter. And there's a lot of sacrifices that you're going to have to make. And fighting, though, if you decide that is what you want, this is your passion, you truly want to go out there and be able to test yourself, I think that you should do it. You should absolutely go and pursue that dream, if it's your dream and you're not going to let other shit get in your way. Yeah. But that goes with any other career choice that you want to make. I think fighting is the most pure, rawest form of self-discovery, because every obstacle you face is going to make you see new levels and variations of yourself that you're going to have to get into a conflict with. And I mean, so fighting is... It's the Matrix, you know. It's you're getting unplugged. Whether the fight is 2 minutes long, 60 seconds long, 20 minutes long. When you're in there, you're completely disconnected from the world around you, because the world doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what's in front of you, and that's the obstacles that are really real. It's you versus you, even though there's somebody in there. Yeah. So fighting is, if you're ready for that journey wholeheartedly, then you got to be all in. If not, you're going to be only setting yourself up for upset after upset, and then you're going to go find something else to do. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, Coach, I want to thank you for the time that you've given me. If you could, you know, tell people where they can find you, social media wise.
You can catch me on all my posts on Instagram, Chad Savage George, and then follow the Savage Hour podcast, where we talk about nothing but the mind, overcoming obstacles, and ways that you can keep pushing yourself to new levels.
Sweet. And you can follow us at the Cynical Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And again, thank you, Coach, for coming by, talking to me. And this has been awesome. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope that our listeners enjoyed the podcast.
My pleasure.
All right, see you guys next time.